Have you ever wondered what your last moment on Earth might be like? Well, with any luck, you're about to find out. Here, in this chapter on the Ascension, she deals with the revelation of the true nature of the body called resurrection and the earthly Christ. And then she explains how after this comes the revelation of the Ascension called the heavenly Christ. This is what it feels like to transition into God's dimension of existence. She explains a little why the Ascension is so overlooked by Christians today as having any relevance for their own lives. This is something that God wanted to reveal to humanity, but which humanity has completely missed because of our insistence that Jesus must return in a visible body. The Ascension reveals exactly the opposite. Why is Bernadette Roberts important? Because based on her own experience, she is often saying that the truths of Christianity are often the opposite to how they are presented. Basically, she is just being very specific about how consciousness ceases to function. I review this a little in my first book. The leaving of consciousness happens in the reverse order that consciousness arose. When it arose, first came a sense of being, then life, then the affective or emotional self, then the reflexive and reflective or intellectual self. As consciousness outwears its usefulness, first to go is the intellect, then the emotions, both happened on the cross, then the sense of life, the resurrection, then the sense of being, which Bernadette Roberts calls the Ascension. Pay attention to this chapter, and I hope you enjoy. One of the fathers said, "We rise in his body. It is to this body we shall ascend. In it we shall repose in the glory of God." It would be hard to imagine a more extraordinary phenomenon than seeing someone suddenly disappear before your eyes. No one witnessed the resurrection. No one saw Jesus' body restored to life. But here, the apostles see Jesus literally vaporized before their eyes. This is like no other miracle, yet it is totally downplayed, not only in the biblical account, but in Christianity as a whole. Traditionally, Jesus' death and resurrection is celebrated as having more import for mankind than anything Christ revealed. Regarded as the major victory and truth of Christ, resurrection is treated as if it were Christ's ultimate revelation. But resurrection is not the final or ultimate revelation of Christ, nor the end God destined for all human beings. Without the Ascension, man's understanding of Christ can never be complete. Stopping with the resurrected Christ has not only generated erroneous views of Christ, but of every man's final estate. That resurrection is man's end has led to all kinds of absurd, mythical, and false ideas as to the true nature of man's eternal life in God. The true nature of Christ's heavenly life, as God revealed it, is no resurrected earthly life. Resurrected was in quotes. Had resurrection implied that eternal life required a physical body, which requires life on some physical planet, there could be no way to explain the bodily disappearance of Jesus. If heaven could have been lived in his resurrected body, then why did he disappear? And to where did he ascend? Also, why did Jesus tell his apostles that for them to become enlightened, know the truth, it was necessary he leave them, be visibly seen no more? Obviously, to see God and the incarnate Logos, or real Christ, one must let go of all physical images. While we are entitled to the icons of the historical Jesus, let us not mistake these for God or the incarnate Logos. Even during the Logos' incarnate life on earth, Christ was never available to the senses. As Jesus said, Only God could reveal Christ because flesh and blood could not do this. That Jesus had to leave for the eternal Christ to be revealed means that the man the apostles saw was not Christ. Between resurrection and ascension, we only have 5 accounts of Jesus appearing to his apostles, unusual accounts in that no one recognized him. Mary thought he was a gardener, and on that same day, on the way to Emmaus, Jesus showed himself under another form, and was only identified in the breaking of the bread. What John records as his 3rd appearance was on the shore of Galilee, where again he was only recognized after the miracle of the fishes. On that same evening, Jesus appeared to the disciples, who also did not recognize him. Thomas wouldn't even believe it was him until he showed him his wounds. These 4 appearances were on the same day as his resurrection, and according to one account, it was on this same evening he took them to the Mount of Olives, where, according to Luke's Gospel, he withdrew from them and was carried up to heaven. In Acts, Luke says, "While they looked on, he was raised up, and a cloud received him out of their sight." Neither John nor Matthew record this event, and Mark only says, "After he had spoken to them, was taken up into heaven, and sitteth on the right hand of God." These are the only accounts we have of Jesus' resurrection and ascension. It could be said Jesus ascended on the same day he was resurrected, the 2 events being consecutive and not disconnected in time, in days or weeks. In other words, resurrection keeps going with no interval in between. Jesus' appearances, of course, were due to the apostles' need to see in order to believe. Luke's saying Jesus appeared for 40 days after his resurrection was only symbolic, according to some fathers, and not factual. I believe 40 has to do with being earthly, and 30 with heavenly. So too, we wonder how Paul could say Jesus appeared to more than 500 of the brethren at the same time, when Peter tells us God allowed him to be seen not by the whole people, but only by certain witnesses God had chosen beforehand. But whatever the biblical discrepancies, Jesus' physical appearance had so changed that his identity could only be ascertained by reference to his pre-resurrected life. Given that his own apostles did not recognize him, one wonders if Jesus appeared today in a supermarket, if anyone would recognize him. The lesson, of course, is to be polite to one's neighbor, because it might just be Jesus. Possibly if the apostles had immediately recognized Jesus as they had previously known him, they might have doubted he really died, in which case they would have doubted the resurrection. It is interesting, however, they knew him despite not seeing the man they knew, which tells us there is more to knowing someone than what appears. Altogether, only 3 short sentences recount the ascension. After many pages of Jesus' passion building up to the surprise and wonder of the resurrection, the sparse account of the ascension is anticlimactic, even given short shrift. Thus, the final and glorious revelation of God's own transfigured and glorified human nature has never been understood as strategic to the whole revelation of Christ. What threw water on this glorious event was Luke's story of 2 men in white, Acts 1, verse 10, who asked the witnesses why they were standing, looking at the clouds. When told they were looking for a man in the clouds, Jesus, what could these men in white have said to comfort these bereft men? Being psychologically astute, they reassured them. This Jesus who was taken up from you into heaven will come back the same way you have seen him go there. These words have so comforted Christians for over 2,000 years, people are still waiting to see Jesus appear in the clouds. What is so incredible is that this remark from 2 unidentified men in white